100 Winters, Retracing the Great Race Against Death, written by Jonathan Nathaniel Hayes, illustrated by Caleb Gingras. Chapter 6, to Tanana. The epic journey of the previous day and the time it had taken meant the dogs were now ready to push on to the Yukon River. Unfortunately, our supplies were still a day or more behind us. No supplies meant no feed for the dogs going forward. Chief Ray told us that there was a small grocery store in the village. The state of Alaska hadn't been able to reopen access to the village from the main road system due to the same weather conditions that had bogged us down. MAINE had been cut off from Fairbanks for 2 weeks. This made groceries and supplies even more valuable than they normally would be in a remote village. I sent Caleb off on his snow machine with my credit card and instructions to buy as much meat for the dogs as the store could spare. He returned with ground beef, chicken, and hot dogs. My mouth watered as I cooked a hearty, meaty soup using human-grade ingredients for the dogs. But as every musher knows, the dogs always eat better than we do. They came first. That $250 worth of meat, it would be gone in a single day, easily. For the humans, dinner was frozen pizza from a cardboard box. It was devoured with enthusiasm nonetheless, but I won't lie, I envied my dog's meal that day. I knew the meat would fuel the team for another 60 miles or so, just enough to reach the village of Tanana on the Yukon River. But then what? Given the delays we had already faced, Jamie and Jeff would need at least a day to retrieve our supplies from Talavana Roadhouse, possibly 2, depending on trail conditions. If I pushed on, the dogs would once again outpace their supplies. I desperately wanted to keep moving, but ensuring the health and safety of all 16 of my dogs was paramount. In the original serum run, mushers like Wild Bill lost dogs to exhaustion and cold. In the Iditarod, dogs are regularly dropped along the way, and many teams cross the finish line with half of their original number in harness or less. My goal was different. I wanted every single one of my little Seppalas to complete the journey. To do that, they needed the best care and consistent quality food. So I could take no more chances. I made the call. We would wait. Jamie and Jeff set out in minus 50 degrees to retrieve the supplies. Caleb stayed behind to interview local mushers, while I cared for the dogs and tended to minor frostbite from my earlier polar plunge. I was fortunate to share a cup of coffee and spend much of that day with Chief Ray. I loved listening to him share stories of his father's mail runs by dog team. He was quiet, confident, and deliberate in his speech. Every word carried weight. I savored every moment. "Your dogs look like the ones my father used to run," he said. I heard that sentiment before, and I would hear it again as we followed the Yukon. "You seem to know a lot about dogs," I said. "I am a musher." "You used to run dogs?" "No, I have a dog team." At his age, most mushers are retired. The sport is brutal on the body, but Chief Ray continued. "I ran with my father and have had dogs most of my life. I run sprint hounds now. I groom my own trails. I like to go real fast," he noted with a smile. Then he shared a sobering truth, a reality unraveling the traditional native way of life along these Alaskan waterways, a story I first heard from him and would hear echoed in the villages after village along the Yukon. The salmon fishing is gone. For thousands of years, Athabascan cultures had depended on the salmon run. Each year, the fish would swim upriver from the Bering Sea to spawn, and the people would catch, smoke, and store the meat for the long winters. But now, too many salmon were taken commercially in the Bering Sea. They stopped coming, and now there's a law. We're not allowed to catch them. The irony is bitter. Commercial overfishing depleted the resource, and now the very people who have depended on it for millennia are forbidden to fish in hopes of restoring the population. The consequences reach far beyond lost meals. Other than occasional large game, the chief said, sled dog teams were fed almost exclusively on dried fish. Now native dog teams are disappearing from native villages. That revelation would haunt me for the rest of the expedition. Along the trail, children would run up to greet us, Athabascan children, grinning and wide-eyed, eager to meet the dogs. This was their heritage I had come to honor. Yet most of their families could no longer afford their own team because they could no longer catch their own fish. It's a massive issue, yet outside of the region, I've never once heard it discussed. I can't fix it, but I can raise awareness, and I hope this chapter helps. When Jamie and Jeff returned, they were in good spirits, but their faces were raw from the cold, and they were visibly shivering. It was time to treat everyone, not just the dogs. We rode the machines to the Hot Springs Resort, where I treated the crew to burgers at the restaurant. To our delight, Chief Ray and a few new friends from Manly were there too. We shared a warm meal and good fellowship. The next morning, the dogs were raring to go. It was minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit, just 3 degrees shy of the minus 38 Fahrenheit during the original run a century earlier. It was overcast but calm, the mushing equivalent of a bright, sunny summer day. The dogs danced at the sight of their harnesses, dried and thawed overnight in the tribal building. Each one vied for my attention, eager to be the next one harnessed. Chief Ray pulled up on his snow machine to see me off, wearing a broad smile and offering a hug. "Are you sure you won't hitch up your team and ride out with me?" I asked. No, he chuckled. "My dogs aren't for these conditions. Remember, I like to go fast." "But I'll follow you out of town on my machine," he added. It was a welcome offer. Every fork in the trail was unknown territory for both me and my lead dogs. My human team planned to pack up at a slower pace, fuel up at the village gas station when it opened, and catch up later. I set off through one of the most beautiful stretches of the expedition, second only perhaps to the portage between Kaltag and Unalakleet. It was to be a day of more than 60 miles in deep snow. In one run, I would cover the ground that was split between two native mushers in the original run, John Folger and Sam Joseph. I planned to rest and snack the dogs at 20 miles and at 40 miles before reaching Tanana. Just before the first rest, the snow machiners caught up and built a fire in the trail. It turned into a fun break on an otherwise cold, straightforward run. Knowing we'd arrive in Tanana a day later than expected, and that the next day would be long, I directed the team to go ahead to the village. Caleb could conduct interviews with descendants of Serum Run mushers, while Jamie and Jeff would meet with our hosts. But before leaving that break spot, I had an idea. This was the perfect chance to turn Jeff Kelly into a musher. He loved the dogs, but had never driven a dog team. So I took his Scandic wide-track snow machine, and he mushed a half dozen miles before we swapped back. My second trail break at 40 miles came in complete darkness. I knew there wasn't another soul for 30 miles in any direction. The stars burned above me as I fed the dogs, treated a few cut paws, and then laid down on my sled. The dogs, full and content, let their traditional post-meal howl out, a chorus of unity and gratitude. It's one of my favorite sounds in the world. But just as they finished, a new sound rose from the forest. The wolves. Their howl was like an echo of a variation of the same song the dogs had just sung. like two soldiers from different regions of the country sharing variations of the same nursery rhyme they heard growing up. I had forgotten Cynthia Erickson's warning. The wolves around Tanana are eating dogs. They've gotten bold. They come into the village and kill them and drag them off. I've spent my adult life studying wild and domestic canids, undergraduate and graduate, classroom and field. But book knowledge only goes so far. Wolves avoid humans, and unlike domestic animals, injuries are fatal for them, so they choose their battles. Like Vikings of old, wolves will not attack unless they sense an overwhelming advantage. In this case, I had 16 dogs. While my dogs are only half the size of the wolves in this region, a dog pack of this size was no soft target. Still, curiosity, or the scent of the salmon and beaver in my sled, might entice them closer. So I laid back on my sled, savoring the moment. I shut off my headlamp and rested my eyes, with one hand on my .44 Peacemaker revolver, just in case. The run to Tanana was slow, full of long hills, deep snow, but it was perfect. A day alone with my Creator and His creation. When I finally dropped off the steep bank onto the Yukon River, I was elated. We're here. We're doing it. The Yukon River. I don't remember how many miles I traveled across that dark, unmarked expanse. The darkness was so thick, my headlamp couldn't even reach the shoreline. The river ice creaked faintly under the sled's runner, the sound swallowed instantly by the silence. But I wasn't afraid, I was proud. Frequently, I turned off the light, hoping to glimpse Tanana's glow. I saw none, only a distant black mountain silhouetted by a red haze, perhaps from the village, or the northern lights behind the fog. At last the trail rose from the river, through tight woods and onto a plowed road. The dogs sensed the village and surged. My brake tips had worn through, a worrying sign giving the miles ahead. In this state, my brake was more of a suggestion than a command. God, if we meet a wild animal now, I'm cooked. Usually, Jamie, Caleb, or Jeff would come out to escort me into the village, but not tonight. They'd lost track of time enjoying Cindy Erickson's hospitality. I reached the town around 9 p.m. 2 native women walked down the street. Tough folks, I thought. Back home, no one would be outside in this cold. The dogs slowed, curious. "Hi, are you the serum musher?" one of the women called, tossing down her cigarette. "Yes, ma'am. My team's supposed to meet at the school. Can you tell me how to get there?" "Oh, there are a few turns. I'll show you. It's easier than explaining." "Hop on," I said, pointing to the sled. "I can sit on top of the sled and ride?" she asked eagerly. "Sure thing. You tell me where to turn and I'll tell the dogs." She lit up like a Christmas tree. Even with her added weight, the sled skidded around every corner until we reached the school lot. Caleb emerged as I began unhitching. "Thank you," I told her. "If you wait, my friend can give you a snow machine ride back." "That's okay. I'll walk. You're visiting Cindy, right?" "I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for the ride." And with that, she vanished into the night. By the time the dogs were fed and bedded down, Jamie and Jeff were back. "I'm too late for dinner," I said, although it was more of a question than a statement. "Cindy packed one for you," Jamie grinned. "She's great, and she's expecting us for breakfast in the morning." You've been listening to 100 Winters, Retracing the Great Race Against Death. If you're enjoying these free audio chapters, then I want to ask you to do me a favor and get onto Amazon or get onto MUSH MAINE's website and order yourself a copy. We'll be offering autographed copies on the website, or you can order it directly from Amazon. And thanks again. Till next time.